Daisy, now that you have seen the completed version of The Rise of Skywalker, tell me the first reaction you had when the credits hit.
My head was literally spinning. I saw JJ come here and be like, "You okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think I'm okay." And it was, yeah, it's overwhelming.
And it was cool.
It is cool. Even though it's strange watching oneself, and there's a lot of that is to digest. But in general, I really think the film is great. It's so quick and punchy. You're so with all the characters. And I was asking my sister who watched it with me, you do understand why people are doing the things they are. It definitely requires a second watch because so much goes on. But it's so great and and as Richard said, it's such a beautiful ending. Yeah, I think people will be happy.
You know, as an actor, what is the most satisfying or fulfilling part about playing a character across 3 films? And does it maybe have something to do with continually learning something new about her?
The thing is, I'm not one of those people that comes in as like, I'm in character. I say the words and do the thing, and then I guess it becomes the character. So I don't think of it so much like that, but I think looking back, it's gratifying that stuff I never imagined I would do it the first time around, I'm doing this time around, and I've had the space to do that. So I've got to be Rey starting out, which she was and I was, and now we're here. So I think it's being able to continue to try stuff and develop, and yeah.
How has being in these films given you a new appreciation for fandom in general? Like, how much do you adore, like, the Reylo fandom aspect of these films? And just, do you have a new appreciation for fans?
I think I have a new appreciation for people that really stick with something. My trainer is a Tottenham Hotspurs fan. Tottenham Hotspurs last year weren't winning anything, but he's a fan of them. It doesn't matter if they win. He loves the team. And I think with Star Wars, even though everybody has an opinion, there's always a conversation, people aren't going to be happy, people have stuck with this for over 40 years. And there is really something to be said for the endurance of that, to continue to love something. And even if you don't agree, to continue to be part of a conversation about it. For sure, I think it's amazing, and that people are so creative and it means so much. It's crazy because I don't have that about anything. I'm like, wow, do I love anything enough to travel somewhere for it? But I would love to know how that feels, and I think it's amazing that people love it this much.
Could I just ask you a quick, looking back at the saga, favorite moment from the 9 films that you have?
Ooh. I don't know. It's tough. I mean, the last few days has been really nice because you think, now is more of a chance to reflect on everything, and you look down a row of people and you're like, I genuinely like and love all of you. Probably that.
People keep telling me they know me. No one does.
But I do.
So playing Kylo Ren over the course of 3 films, as an actor, what is the most sort of satisfying aspect of playing a character over the course of a trilogy? And does it have something to do with the fact that you're continually learning something new about him?
That's a good question. Yeah, from the first meeting that I had with JJ, he gave me an overall arc of what he imagined the character would do. So where he would start the 3rd movie, no one knew how it ended. Even when we started it, no one knew how it ended. So to finally build towards something for 6 years that you have in the back of your mind was, you know, an exercise in patience. You know, it affected everything that we did in The Force Awakens, everything that we did in the second one, and obviously how we started the 3rd one. So hopefully it worked.
You know, we're looking back at the saga, 9 films. This is the finale of those 9 films. Do you have a particular favorite moment from the entire saga? And maybe it's a moment that helped even inform your performance of Kylo Ren.
No, I mean, there's so many things that you're surrounded by, so many set pieces and actors who are giving you so much information that, you know, in a way it's hard to kind of retreat into yourself because there's so many answers in front of you. Even in the costume from the very beginning was something that was ill-fitting and tight, you know, that evolved over 3 movies. So, like, what does that say about the character? He's wearing a mask. You know, what does that say about what he's hiding? Who he's presenting to the world versus who he is? You know, he has a lightsaber that doesn't work, or gives you the impression that it could self-destruct at any minute. There's so much information in that it was helpful. As far as moments on set, there's, you know, too many to count. That it's, you know, Mark being on set for the first time, having a scene with him, and really, like, you know, having a moment of, oh right, Star Wars, I forgot that, or, you know, Force Awakens, you know, peeking in when Harrison and Keri had a scene, you know, playing ping pong in between takes. And you have, like, you know, Joonas and Oscar and I, you know, all playing ping pong with, you know, with people in the crew. It was just, it's a bunch of things like that that I'll think about. Not specifically one tentpole moment.
You know, the fandom of Star Wars is its own crazy extra level of hype. When it comes to Kylo Ren, there's like a subsection where they romanticize Reylo, the relationship between Rey and Kylo Ren. Are you aware of that stuff? Does it make you happy? Do you have a new appreciation of fandom, sort of being in Star Wars and seeing the imaginations and nooks and crannies that fans sort of inhabit and create their own sort of fan fiction, I guess?
I mean, I don't internalize it because I don't know that it has much to do with me. If anything, I think it has to do with the strength of the movie. That and what makes these movies universal and have not only but stretch kind of across time is that, yes, there's a huge, obviously, you know, visual element that's going on that's very satisfying. There's, you know, it's beautiful to look at, but no one will care if you don't care about what these human themes that are what propel the movie forward. This thing of, like, Luke being a kid from a small town who feels like he's destined for something greater, about friendship and discovering your place, you know, among your friends, family that you've acquired and family that you're tied to. How do you, things about them that you identify with or things that you're trying to run away from. All these themes are the things that make the spectacle of it more exciting and interesting.
It's an instinct. A feeling. The Force brought us together.
First question, now that you've seen the completed version of The Rise of Skywalker, what was your first reaction when the credits hit?
I'm still numb, still figuring it out. It's a whole process for us. It isn't like just watching a film and asking, you know, where did you like it? Did you not? It's just a whole mental process. It's significant. Its significance is much more than just a film for us. It's like a time in our lives, a time spent with each other. So, you know, I need to watch it again, because I'm still processing, for sure. I am.
What is something new that you learned about Finn on this third time around playing him?
Learned about him? I think because I was actually imparting those new ideas into Finn, I think, you know, that was exciting to have a fresh new take, especially when it comes to his energy. A lot more growth. As a person between 7 and 9, older, much more stern, you know, gets into a few little arguments, you know, is a bit much more of a, you know, a grounded dude that just wants to get it done. And I think that was something that I was quite, you know, excited by.
You know, we're looking back at the whole saga with this being the finale. Do you have a favorite moment, favorite scene from the 9 films? And maybe it's something that helped inform your performance of Finn.
No, but I do. There's a moment that always makes me laugh when Obi-Wan is fighting Anakin, and Obi-Wan tells Anakin the reason why he's won basically is essentially because he's got the higher ground. You know, that moment I'm always like, why are you telling him that for? Like, keep that to yourself, bro, and just get the work in, yeah? But that's a funny moment I always like. I love that duel. That duel is sick. Yeah. I mean, sometimes they're just doing it. They're just swinging for no reason, as in you can just tell they're just doing skills, but that stuff looked cool.
You know, fandom for this film has been crazy, and there's all kinds of subsections. You got your Finpo, your Raylo. Do you have a new appreciation of fans and fandom having been a part of this series? And if so, what's your favorite sort of experience?
No, not a new appreciation. You know, I'm part of the fandom before signing on to the films, watching the films, watching, you know, the animated shows and playing a video game. So I understand that. I just didn't know they shipped. Like, I didn't know these guys were like against each other. I thought it was like a whole loving community of different types of ships. No, don't try to put the Raylos against, you know, anyone else. There's a whole war going on, which I'm not involved in. Love you all. So it's been nice to that's been the new side to the fandom where I've been like, oh, it's like an actual tribe. There's some tribal stuff going on. It's been cool.
You know, and now that you're finishing this up, you know, what's your biggest takeaway in terms of why this series has endured for 40 plus years? Why do people love it so much?
I mean, for me, it's kind of like what Richard said. Like I see the influences, especially. I was just a big advocate of what the inspiration behind George Lucas's take on this, and you know, you've got the Bible in there, Greek mythology. You know, that just the essence of a view on life and good and evil. That stuff really, really speaks to me. And obviously it speaks to a whole bunch of people. I also think it's fun. You can interact with it in several different ways. If you're not into the films, you can read the books. If you're not into the books, you can play the video games. There's so many different ways to do it. And so I think it just will survive generations.
All right, so when you first took on the role of Lando, way back in The Empire Strikes Back, do you remember what you were most interested in learning about the character before you played him?
Well, you know, when I found out I was going to wear a cape, and also the name CALRISSIAN, IAN is Armenian, I thought that was those two elements or aspects or elements what I thought were two things that I could really do some interesting stuff with. Putting
on that cape sort of helped you feel a little bit more.
Well, the cape, and then but the name also sort of took it. It allowed me to become much more than what one would imagine. Bigger than life character.
For sure. As a follow-up to that, what's something new that you learned about Lando embodying the character all of these years later?
Well, the way he's being presented now, I think there's a kind of depth you didn't see with Lando in Empire or The Return of the Jedi. The Empire was an introduction. Return of the Jedi, I think that you almost got the feeling that they didn't quite know what direction to take Lando.
Do you feel like his story concludes in this film?
I hesitate to say conclude. Let me put it that way.
You know, when you got behind the wheel of the Millennium Falcon again, all these years later, did a memory flash before you? What was the first thing that you thought about?
Well, I mean, I thought about, you know, the first time I sat in the Millennium Falcon in Return of the Jedi. It was pretty, and I was curious to see if what it would be like. And it was pretty much the same, except you had a different film director. Working with JJ is a lot of fun and very exciting. He's a very imaginative kind of individual.
You know, as a legacy member of Star Wars, why do you think all of these years later, 40 plus years later, Star Wars is so important to people in their lives from all over the globe?
Well, certainly it's a great adventure. It's an epic adventure. But I think also it addresses the whole question of the light and the dark, you know, good and evil, outside of yourself. And also there's the struggle with the dark side of yourself as opposed to the light side of yourself, within yourself. So I think that's pretty much a universal theme in most of our lives. And I think even when we don't think about it, when we're not aware of it, but it's always there. We're always dealing with things that are good and evil outside, and we're always dealing with the universe within ourselves.
And now, you're coming together.
All right, so now that you have seen the completed film, The Rise of Skywalker, tell me your first reactions when the credits hit.
I just astounded at JJ's talent. That's the first thing that I felt. The fact that he stuck the landing and in such a spectacular way. That was my first feeling.
Yeah, it was just, the credits, well, I love the ending of it. And I was just overwhelmed, and I just went and gave JJ the biggest hug. Because I know he felt so much pressure he just felt so respectful of the people who love this, and he's a fan of it. But it's just so good, and it totally delivers.
Keri, as a newcomer to the series, what was the moment where you paused and you looked around you and you said, holy crap, I'm in a Star Wars movie?
There was a moment when I saw a large number of stormtroopers walking, and I was like, oh my God, I'm in Star Wars. Yes!
You know, Oscar, for you, how satisfying is it for an actor to play a character across 3 films? And does it have something to do with continually learning something new about a character?
Yeah, I'd never had that experience where, you know, you do something and then you wait to find out what's going to happen with that character later, and not really knowing, and not knowing if what you're doing now is going to affect, you know, it's like, if I'm bad in this scene, will they not write me into the next, you know, like there's a lot of, in my already neurotic mind, you know, stuff to really get me going. But, so that was a challenge. But like you said, I think there was something really fun about each film allowing to find a different facet of how his story unfolds. And the arc of someone that starts off as this dedicated soldier becoming a leader.
You know, we're looking back at the saga, 9 films. This is the finale. Do either of you have a favorite Star Wars moment from the films? And maybe it's a moment that helped inform your performances in some way.
For me, like, just the thing that I always think about are those early, like, cantina scenes with the crazy music and the aliens. And there was a moment where I felt that a little bit, that one, and it's so, you know, that's one of the coolest things about Star Wars. They don't make movies like this anymore. It feels like one of those old John Huston movies where you move to this far-off place for 2 years and they spend all this time doing costume fittings and designing things and the artistry. That's what Star Wars still is, and they don't make those movies anymore. And like those cantina scenes, just the world that you're transported into.
I think that's why, like, they've had a particular way of igniting people's imaginations and making you feel like there is so much on the outer edges of the frame that's happening. You know, there's like all these worlds that are hinted. And I think that's also why maybe the people want the information, because they've imagined so many possibilities.
Yeah, it is
which
still
is
sort
very
of
unique.
elusive,
you know, I can't think of any other thing that causes like that one little item makes someone think of like, well, what world did that come from? And who are those? Like, who are the parents? Like, who cares who the parents of characters are usually?
I know.
But you're like, everyone wants to know whose parents are who. And who, you know, it's kind of an amazing.
And how it all fits into the puzzle of this giant myth. Yeah.
What are you doing there, 3PO?
Taking one last look, sir, at my friends.
As you're getting ready to work on The Rise of Skywalker, you sat down with George Lucas again. What was the most important thing that you wanted to learn from him this time around as you got ready to finish the story that he started?
We just wanted to sit down and hear whatever he had to say, and he talked quite a bit about the Force and what it meant to him, and all sorts of things that were less story specific and more about just sort of approach and the spirit with which he felt we should approach our job. And we tried to incorporate as much of that as we could, though he didn't work on the story per se with us. It's not like that was what he was doing, but he was, someone we wanted to hear from as much as he would be willing to talk to us, and he was incredibly generous.
You know, I'm kind of obsessed with the naming of Star Wars characters. I feel like once a Star Wars character is named, that name becomes iconic. And do you have a process for naming characters? Like take Zori Bliss, for example. Where do these names come from?
It's a strange thing. It really is like with everything, with every design, with every sequence, with every costume, anything. It's a feeling of what your gut says. Like what is the right thing? A lot of these names are things that just literally they come to us and we'll live with it for a while, and they defend themselves. Like if it's not quite the right name, you feel it after a few hours, a few days, a few weeks. You just start to go, eh. When something feels like it's working, it just sticks. And some characters get named instantly, and that's their name forever. Others go through dozens of names until finally you choose one.
You know, we're looking back at the saga, the 9 films. Do you have a favorite moment, favorite scene from the saga? And maybe it's a scene that you went back to as you were getting ready to work on these films that helped.
Well, I mean, I went back to watch all the movies again early on anyway, but the one scene I always go back to just because there's something, I mean, there's so many scenes, but from the original New Hope was just the scene where you meet Han. There's just something about meeting Han Solo that is just so instantly timeless, instantly classic. One of the, obviously one of the greatest characters, one of the great scenes. So it's just, for some reason I always go to that. Then as I'm saying it, I start to think of dozens of other scenes. I'm like, yeah, but what about, so it's hard to choose one.
As a Star Wars superfan yourself, what do you hope to see from the next iterations of big screen Star Wars films that come after this one, as a fan?
As a fan, I just want to be surprised. I want to be taken places that I would love to think continues that sense of hopefulness and possibility. I mean, that's the thing that Star Wars does, I think, better than anything, which is make you feel like anything is possible, and your new best friend is someone you're going to meet in the most unlikely place. And I just think there's the adventure you're going to go on, the challenges that will be ahead of you, that we're all capable of incredible things. That the family that we make is the family that really matters. There's so many aspects of Star Wars that are profound to me, and in whatever form it takes, those are the kind of elements that I think are about the big heart at the core of Star Wars, which I'd love to see continue.
So my first question for you, now that you've seen the completed version of The Rise of Skywalker, what was your first reaction when it ended?
Whoa. Wow. Nearly whoa. Wow. Because JJ's pulled off her masterstroke.
Absolutely, yeah. Really, just the release of energy and emotion that the film created, it's unbelievable.
We're all looking back at the entire saga, all 9 films here. And Anthony, I'm especially interested to hear your answer to this because you have been a part of all of those films. Favorite moments or favorite moment from the saga?
Favorite moment of the saga was so many actually, but coming back for the start of episode 9 with the old team and also Keri in a certain way being part of it all, and with some new characters coming in, and all the time JJ's wonderful enthusiasm.
I'm gonna keep my answer very brief. Favorite moment. Luke drinking blue milk from
that's a good moment.
That's my favorite. That's just like shows you Star Wars, the way it mixed realism and then fantasy, and that it's just so Star Wars to me, that moment. Just so out of this world, but still grounded in our world.
Joonas, one thing that we get a lot of questions about Chewbacca is, does Chewbacca have lines? And do you yell them through the costume at all?
Chewbacca sometimes has lines, and sometimes I ask for the intent, what would the line be, so I can, Wookiee speak that line. So I go, we have to get out of here. So I'm inside the mask, and that's the legibility of my words is they don't hear me very well. So
But it certainly helps that you make a noise on the set.
It helps, and it's a much better reaction, and I'm able to influence the timing of the dialogue with my grunts and moans.
3PO has a lot more to do in The Rise of Skywalker, and I'm just curious, after 9 films, what's something new that you learned about playing the character this time around?
Well, he is a pretty static character. He is a machine, but it very much depends who he's put against, who are his companions, and very much what the script gives him to do. And in this one, he is given to do something that is quite a challenge. And that's just so refreshing. Otherwise, it is just standing there doing the same thing all the time. So suddenly I had a real gift from JJ.
Here we are 40 plus years later. What do you think it is about Star Wars that is key, it endures, and it is still so beloved around the world? What would you say that?
That is the second most, the question I get asked, is it hot in the costume and why does Star Wars endure? What do you think?
I think JJ said it best, and it's the end-all answer to this question. It's the hope, the sometimes naive, but always warranted hope that Star Wars represents.
And George started the first one with A New Hope.
The Force will be with you.
Always.
So, Naomi, let me start with you. As a newcomer to Star Wars, at what point, what was the moment where you stopped and paused and looked around and said, holy crap, I'm in a Star Wars movie?
Oh, there's so many of them. I think probably one of the first moments I did that was when we were putting my costume together. And like, we were, it's a giant mirror, obviously, and there was loads of people like attaching different things. And it was really at a point where we had found the backstory for the costume and the reasons why things were where they were. And I like looked in the mirror and I was just like, because it didn't look like me. Usually the characters I play are contemporary and usually in the present day. So this was the first time that I felt like out of this world, and it really, it messes with you a bit, but in like the best way.
Kelly, what was the most fulfilling part about completing Rose's journey in this film?
I think just working with the amazing people that I got to work with. I feel really, really fortunate to be able to have worked with such amazing actors and meeting new people like May. I'm really excited. Yeah.
Was there something cool that you got to do as Rose in this film that you didn't get to do in the previous film that you kind of geeked out on a bit?
Sure. Yeah. I think working with different people that I didn't get to work with last time, that would be the best thing.
We're looking back, this completes a saga of 9 films. When you look back at the 9 films, do you have a favorite Star Wars moment?
I mean, there are some really iconic ones. This was my first memory of Star Wars, is the like,
yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, no, and his arm, and like that's like, to me that's like just inside that, you'd role play that with your other friends in the playground. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah. I think seeing Chewie and Han Solo in the Falcon, that was really cool. Yeah. And is really cool. Yeah.
Did you've seen the completed film at this point?
We just saw it yesterday.
Yeah.
Can you give me your first reaction when the film ended?
I was like, my knees were like up here. Like we were sat next to each other.
Yeah, we were right next to each other.
And I like turned and like my heart was beating so fast, and it was such a celebration, and I think everyone felt relieved. It's been months and months of work.
Yeah.
And also I was like, I think I need to go to sleep, because I was like, it's such an assault on the senses from all the different characters and the amazing visuals, that I was like, there's so much information that I needed to like take a second alone and just be like, wow, okay,
yeah,
it's a lot.
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree. I think it's really hard to process when you're sitting there with everyone who helped make it, and you're like,
yeah.
But it was really, just like the visuals of it and just the magnitude.
Yeah.
It's just insane.
I've never seen anything like it, and also just being there with you guys, and it felt such a surreal moment to go to Bad Robot and sit in a cinema with everyone, just crash. You know, some sour Patch Kids, Sweeties or whatever. Yeah, and like, you know, just casually watching the film that we made.
Yeah,
it's crazy.